Since it's already 3 p.m. or 2 p.m. in Vietnam, I'm just going to go ahead and start this webinar. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shihan from New Venture Corporation. We are the organizer of the webinar today. Welcome aboard. So ever since the publication of the first round solar FIT, Vietnam has become one of the hottest solar energy investment destinations in Southeast Asia region. And especially in 2020, Vietnam has experienced a rapid growth for the solar installed capacity. And what comes next is the urgent needs for the relevant infrastructure updates and the alternative solutions for the country to take on more solar capacity. So regarding to this market focus, during this webinar, speakers will give their opinions and interpretations on the topic of green revolution in Vietnam, integrate solar with energy storage, how and when. So now I would like to go ahead and give a brief introduction and a big welcome to our speakers for today. They are Mr. Chris Deng, the Global Product Manager from Jinko Solar, Ms. Sarah Fairhurst. She is the moderator of the panel discussion, and she's the partner from S. Fairhurst Advisory. And Mr. Wing Kwang Min, the Director of Power Market Development Research and Training Center, and Mr. Ding Sen Duke, the Manager of Power System Analysis and Planning Department from EBN and LDC, and Mr. Arun Jamakasminit, Head of Vietnam from Jinko Solar, Mr. Samraj Kumar, the Executive Chairman and CEO from SkyX Solar, and Mr. Chavanat Chayanun, Vietnam Country Manager from Gangku Engineering Public Company Limited. So for today's webinar, we will first start with a 10 minutes technology showcase given by Mr. Chris from Jinko Solar, following by a around 15 minutes panel discussion given by all of our speakers. So the organizer of today's webinar, New Venture Corporation, is dedicated to supporting the key investors and developers for successful development and investment in Asia Pacific renewable energy sector. Our footprints cover Asia Pacific countries such as Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, China, Myanmar, Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, and some Middle East countries. And before starting the webinar, I would like to introduce all attendees with some housekeeping notes. If you experience any technical issues or you have any questions for our speakers, please do feel free to use the below Q&A box. And also we will share the presentation slides and the webinar recordings with all of you by next week through your registration email. So now I would like to go ahead and hand the mic to Chris, our first speaker today. Let's welcome.
Thanks, Shan. I'll take from here. Start to sharing the slides. Okay. Good afternoon and good morning and good evening from people from all over the world or people from the Asian part. My name is Chris and Chris Deng. So it's my honor and it's a pleasure to meet you guys all over here and to discuss the green revolution in Vietnam. So I'll just go up straight and jump to it. So as we know that the Vietnam market of the energy storage or the PV has been growing in the past few years. So the traditional electricity generation such as hydro, coal, and natural gas are took consistently firmly in past few years, but in 2018, the non-hydro renewable pops up like 5% of the total source. So that's where the PV side comes up. So nearly over 21 gigawatts has been installed from 2018 to 2020, and also the World Bank has shows up like very good economic growth, nearly 7% in 2021. But due to the coronavirus, it probably dropped to 6%. But that's not going to stop the PV and the green energy development because of the PDF8. So Vietnam planned to increase solar capacity all the way up to the 18.6 gigawatt by 2030s. And that's probably gave a good hint, a good direction for the energy storage, because the situation that has been Vietnam facing, and also pops up in many other different regions, such as China, such as some European countries. So the new PV connection requests are being refused by the government because the various regions, due to the grid reaching its full capacity, which means there's no room and there's no space for the new PV to connect to the grid. And also, I really find some good data and to see what's the load demand and so what's the total install capacity rates. So you can see from the chart that the efficiency rates is not very high, and it took 55%, and highest it could be only 62% in 2030, which means there's a lot of space and there's a lot of room for whether the government, whether the EPC, and whether other group are able to prove that, so we can get more efficiency of our electricity using. So back to the Jinko Solar, Jinko Solar had took the top one shares in the market on the PV side, and with multiple business strategy, the PV plus ESS are one of the strongest approaching that we're doing. And the PV plus building, which is BIPV, and the PV plus water pumping and the 5G communication are the other business line and currently we're doing. So the reason why and the people should trust the Jinko Solar because that due to the many years of developing globally, so Jinko do have really reliable supply chain, as we know. And also Jinko quality definitely guarantee has been certified in from different institutions. And with good marketing influence and customer services that we believe and we can do a really good solution, driver solution to the customer, whether it's customized or the standard product. So what do we want to achieve is 1++ less than 2, which means we're trying to give clients a good cost, a good low cost for their system, also with very good efficiency. And that's the Jinko's PV Plus business strategy being worked in recent years. So back to the products. What's the products of the Jinko ESS products looks like, and what's the advantages in the system? So as we know, the ESS products have been overlapped in residential area, commercial industry, and utility scale, with several capacity from 1.1 kilowatt hours all the way up to the 50, and larger than 50 and larger than 2 megawatt hours. It could be just small cube and some cabinets, and also 20 or 10 or 40 feet containers. That's the products looks like. So we start with the residential product. So the products shows up as present in here. So normally we start from 3.6, which is inverter power, and the battery size is 7.2 kilowatt hours, and it's on grid and off grid can be switched in certain time, and from 7.2 kilowatt hours all the way up to around 20 kilowatt hours. That's how big the battery size is. But how does the system works? The system works are generated the electricity whether from the PV side or the generator side. So the power goes through the line to the PCS. PCS stands for the power conversion system. So it transfers from AC to DC and DC to AC side. And the line, the power will goes to the battery or to the backup use or to the on-grid home load, and also can connect to the grid. And the people or the clients are easily can check their data and check how much energy they've been used, how much energy they've been installed to the battery through the iPhone and through the website. And also the outdated data will be installed in the cloud services. So with this product, what we can offer is really good and more efficiency and more powerful to the home user. So, and definitely the security side, whether it's the temperature and whether other system are being certified by the IEC or UL institution. So it's definitely guaranteed. And installation, I'm not gonna show up here because the video took like 45 minutes and we being uploaded on the YouTube. And basically it's very easy and to do the installation, basically to open the door of the cabinet, connect each wire and the battery to the PCS connection are clearly present in the video. So the link is up to here. People are interested are able to click, check on the YouTube. And another product that Jinko are kind of differently with other other manufacturer, other company is that we took commercial industry as standard products for our clients. So from the naming sides, you can see the H stand for hybrid inverter, which means you can connect to the grid and then connect to the battery system. And the 250 are the BIS power, which is the power of the PCS. And of course, 552 at the battery capacity, which you can, how much energy you can store in whether 10 cube container or the 20 or 40 feet container. So from the model, we are been setting that from 64 kilowatt hours of the capacity all the way up to 2.2 megawatt hours. It contains from 10 feet, 20 feet, and 40 feet container, and with different power system. Of course, the size and the size and the strain and some like frequency range are quite different because there are several modules here and it's good to fit to different clients. And also it's a decoupled solution. So how the system works and what's the charts look like. So basically when the people trying to install the PV with the ESS and the PV module being installed and will transact the power through the DC-DC and to the battery. And the battery could be using in different load. And also when people are trying to sell the battery, sell the electricity to the national grid or to the company, and they can just go through the PCS to the Airbus. And all of that will be controlled by the energy management system, which is called EMS. And that's very important. And the system will have very, very good integrated, it's ready to use, ready to go with high intelligence and high efficiency. And the system are reached the UL 9540, which is one of the highest certificate for the North American, for the global using. So the highly intelligent and the standardization are the guaranteed product. Another one of the most common or one of the really to see the scenario application scenario for the energy storage is the peak valley arbitrage. So which means it's really easy to understand that you get charged to your battery in the time that the selling price of electricity are not very high, which means you get lowest cost to buying the electricity. And when the daytime, such as from like 9 morning to the 12 and the 2 p.m., the price goes very high, and you don't want to purchase the electricity from national grid or national company. You can just use the battery you've been stored later in the beginning or in the morning and to use for load, which that's the economical side. You can save the money and you can make sure that your energy storage are satisfied for the system. How does it work and how to use it? So that's one of the most common application being using. And another point that I want to share is that the people choose the PV plus ESS are being considered or comparing with the traditional grid connection and the diesel generation. So for the LCOE, of course, everyone should know that 7 cents of US dollar or to the 15 cents of US dollar are the average cost for the LCOE is if the thermal plant power company. And when you're trying to get the grid connection, averagely you will spend $2,400 US to do the grid connection, which you can buy the equipment, do the installation, do the debugging, do all the testing, and it's really expensive. And also diesel generator are also expensive as well, not just expensive, but also cause air pollution and really high cost, which is nearly close to 3/4 of the US dollar. And we've been calculating the LCOE, which is the PV plus energy storage system. And it's the price close to 30 cents to the 70 cents per kilowatt hours. And it's also provide clean and cheaper energy source. And also it's more stable energy control, which means we can control how much power we're going to generate it, how much power we're going to use, how much power we're going to store in our system through the EMS. And that's one of the source, or that's one of the reason that we're trying to get the ESS developed. And the utility scale are pretty big or large. This is most likely the customized integration system. So we start with a little bit the small cells, and to the module, to the rack, to the pack, to the rack, and install in the container. So a little bit example of the parameters, that this is like 20 feet containers. And if we do the like working design, which are able to let the person needs to working, do the installation, do the testing, do the checking, we can store around like 1.4, 1.6 megawatt hours total battery capacity. And without working, we can probably do 2.6, 2.7, which is a full load battery. People are not able to walk in, but you can also able to check in the battery system through the side. The door will be open on the side. It's like you're driving the car, you open the passenger seat and the passenger door and the driver's door. So the system is a little bit complicated, and with higher consider of the safety. So the temperature control system and automatic fire extinguisher system are the standard system be using in the container. So the long life circle, we provide over 6,000 circles, and the higher charge rate we can goes up to the 8.6 AC. Okay, back to the Vietnamese market. So what's the opportunity and challenges that we're trying to discuss?
Is there many more slides, Chris? You've gone over your time. I was just wondering.
Yeah, there are like five or four, but I will just do real quick. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. Okay, so basically the AC coupling and DC couple solution are the main technology. So very easy through the AC couple is that there's a grid, there's an AC cabinet, and there's a PV with inverter. And the PCS and the battery will be installed next to them and connect to the Airbus and to the load. And DC couple will be more integrated, and with PV plus DC-DC and PV plus the energy storage, which is with high simple control but high charging efficiency. And some of the cost and feasibility efficiency really depends on system, whether you have already installed the PV system or whether you haven't installed the PV system. You're trying to get a PV in the battery system, where it recommend the new installer to have the DC solution. Or if you have installed the PV side, you don't want to interrupt your system, where you just can offer the AC solution with PCS and battery into your system. There's no conflict and it's ready to use. So some challenges of the energy storage are basically 3 points, I would say. The economics and safety and technology. So you're calculating how much money you're going to cost, and you're calculating how much money you're going to save, and you're going to cost how much money you're going to return. And you can calculate the IRR. That's a really complicated calculation, but for first priority, probably in Vietnam, you need to consider that. And safety issues are also very, very important, and also technology. And from this part, I would say, because their efficiency rate are quite, they're quite low. So Vietnam is one of the most energy efficiency country in the world. And last year, it reduced output of 1.3 billion kilowatt hours. So there's really a space for the energy solution. And also some news pops up like public-private partnership law, which is allowed the private company or private group to do some construction or do some investment for the government. And when I consider about this situation, there's actually two terms that for the Vietnam market. So short term is like we provide a battery and to the whether it's the system or to the grid, and long term it's to the grid upgradation. And the grid upgradation, I saw a news that first private financed transmission line in Vietnam was commissioned in last year. So it took 500 million to build a 17 kilometers transmission line and a 5 kV transmitter substation. So there's take a long time and take more money. But with the energy storage, nearly 200 kilowatt hours are the average cost for the battery size. So from this perspective, I think short time is more fast and considered as more or less situation. And the policy for the side, I would say, people are considering more and more say what are we going to start it and how are we going to start it. And the reference of China is that we start with a small pilot project. And the pilot project will do most likely the frequency modulation or backup use for the electricity. And the subsidy with some supporting policy that the subsidies to the power generation are improved by the government, which is around like 8 cents or around like a quarter for 1 kilowatt hours. And the thermal power frequency modulation are very not quite accurate. You can see this thermal line is the right line, but with energy storage system do the frequency modulation with the output, and the output is more accurate and more instant. So, and that's a little bit comparison of each chart, and that's where the money can be saved, where the penalty can be avoided. Because in China, if the power generator company or the plant are not able to do the frequency modulation, they will get penalized from the government. Okay, so what's the warranty? The warranty are quite different. The residential warranty we offer like 5 or 10 years using. And with after 10 years, it probably goes to 70% end of life, which is gonna take 30% of the beginning capacity. And for commercial utility using, the example that we trying to say is there definitely will be the cell degradation curves goes on. Like first years you'll be using like one day charge and 1 day discharge, and after 10 years or after 5 years or 15 years, the EOL's end of life will go to around 70% or 8%. It depends on how much money you're going to cost and how do you want to design the system. So normally we offer utility for 5 years, commercial industry 5 or 10 years, and residential for 10 years. So yeah, that's how we're going to build a system. Okay, so as I said, high safety, lower cost are the things that we've been chasing, and for the energy plus PV. So this is a reference that we're trying to do it in Nigeria, which is 1.2 kilowatt hours in the PV plus diesel generator plus energy storage. And this is the small one that we did in our Shanghai factory. We have roof on the top, and we have energy and battery side on the side to do the peak shaving and do the peak value arbitrage. And that's some reference. And we'll also have some shipment that goes on in recent years, but it's really right now it's kind of hard because there is situation and traffic globally. So that's how the situation is. And that's all my presentation. Sorry, it took a long time.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing us the great information. And now it's the time to start our panel discussion session, the Green Revolution in Vietnam, Integrate Solar with Energy Storage, How and When. And the moderator will be Ms. Sarah Fairhurst. And for the panelists, we have Mr. Wing Kwang Min, Mr. Ding Sen Duc, Mr. Aaron Jama Kasminit, Mr. Samraj Kumar, Mr. Chavana Chayanun. And I will go ahead and hand the mic to Sarah. And since we went a bit over time for the plenary speech, Sarah, you can feel free to extend the panel discussion for a little bit longer. So now let's welcome everyone.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone. If you could turn your mics on so that we can have a conversation, that'll be great. And your cameras, and come back if you've wandered off, as I see at least one of our panelists has. So for everyone listening, if you want to have a question answered, please put it in the Q&A box, and I'll pick it up as we go through. But in the meantime, let's start our discussion with a sort of a general introduction to some of the current developments that are happening in the market at the moment. And maybe I'll just pick on some of our panelists to give us a bit of an introduction into some of the current developments. Arun, could you kick us off?
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you, and it's my pleasure to join these panelists today. I like to quickly wrap up about the renewable energy development in Vietnam. Actually, the renewable energy, especially in solar, it started in 2018. At that time, the government actually target the solar capacity will hit like 850 megawatts. But it's an tremendous exponential growth of the renewable energy connected to the grid by mid-June of 2019. And especially last year in 2020, based on the data, the renewable energy that connect to the grid system for rooftop is like 9.3 gigawatt, and for solar farm is like over 7 gigawatt. So all together, combined together, today the RE energy is like 21 gigawatt already connected to the grid. And I have to say that from the information I got from the market, half of the rooftop project last year, some of the project is, I would say, not really a rooftop project. It's kind of abuse project where, you know, people build the panel set up on the roof, but actually underground is like the agriculture where they plant the vegetable or something like that. So it's kind of abuse rooftop. But anyway, the government, EVN, I think they're aware of that, and they try to make the new regulation to make sure that these kind of things will not happen again for the next coming ground-mounted project or solar farm rooftop projects in the future. From what I see is that given the Vietnam economy is still growing very fast, like GDP as mentioned, 6-7% per year. Energy consumption also can hit like 8 to 9% annually. So the electricity consumption in this country still grow very fast every year. So it definitely the government need to think of how to expand the energy protection for this country's security. So renewable energy is one of the strategy for the country to expand in 2030 to 2045 as put in the PDP 8 draft. I think in the long term, there's still promising market for renewable energy in Vietnam. But just for this year, maybe because of there is some vacuum happen, either COVID pandemic affect to the market, and there's overload supply of electricity in the grid. So MYT EVN will need to take time to adjust the policy plan for the future, how they're going to set the strategy, the right approach for the future RE development in Vietnam. And of course, I will come later for the ESS, which play a very critical role to support the RE development transition in this country.
Thank you for that, Arun. Does anyone else want to jump in with some of their views on the current developments? I mean, I understand one of the big issues is actually the curtailments in the market, and so it's clearly a big issue. I think we're waiting for Mr. Duc to come back, but I think he might be able to talk to us from the technical and policy perspective. But why don't we start with any commercial implications of curtailment? Samresh, do you have a view on curtailment and what we need to do to mitigate it in Vietnam?
Yeah, sure, Sarah. Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is, just a quick introduction. My name is Samresh Kumar. I am the executive chairman and CEO of SkyX Solar. SkyX Solar is a rooftop solar power focused company in Vietnam. What we do is we design, build, install and operate rooftop solar power plants on roofs of primarily industries. And it's a zero capex, zero opex solution for our clients. And over the last year, we built around 30 megawatts, partnering with companies across the sectors and from different parts of the world, across Vietnam. We intend to develop more than 200 megawatts in the next 2-3 years, and these are pure rooftop. As fellow members have shared that the development in solar power over the last 2 years has been actually more than 25 times what the government was projecting. So obviously there are challenges to the grid. There are curtailments, especially in some provinces, the curtailments are much larger than some other provinces. But there are implications to that. One is definitely regulations would be stronger. There would be energy storage solutions which would come to play. But there are again opportunities and challenges related to ESS, and maybe I can share my thoughts a little later on that. But I guess in terms of potential for rooftop, because the number of industries in Vietnam is huge, and more companies are building their factories in Vietnam, given that this is the new factory of the world. And factories have roofs, and it's commercially attractive to build the rooftop solar on the roofs. And when you add the energy storage along with that, it becomes a very powerful combination. And then it will help in curtailment as well.
Yeah, so I was going to say, are you ensuring when you're putting the rooftop solar in, that all of that rooftop solar is being used within the factory, so thus it's not actually needing to be exported to the grid? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, no, most of the projects which we developed was last year, only a few projects which we developed this year. So last year, we had self-consumption clients. So the clients typically consumed almost all the solar power which was produced on the roofs. The excess was exported to the grid. Now, only during the TET time, we faced some curtailment challenges, but otherwise we did not face a lot of curtailment requests from EVN. Especially because of the provinces we were operating in.
Okay, thanks for that. Ming, can you also give us some insight from the grid perspective on the curtailment issues? You're on mute. Ming?
Sorry. Can you hear me?
I can now. Did you hear the question?
Yes, I think that I heard your question, but we waiting for Mr. Duc from NNDC. I think he will have the good answer. But from from my point of view, from the regulator, I think that I come back my presentation 3 or 4 years ago when you know we have the very attractive fit for the solar, and I also state that we will facing the problem that you mentioned, that the curtailment, and at that time I only think that we will face the problem maybe on in the short term, like 1 or 2 years, but you know that I think that now we will face this problem at least 3 or 5, maybe more than 5 years, if you know we will still have the booming the wind energy in Vietnam, not only solar, but from the curtailment. I think that is the risk. It's a risk, and I think that most of the investor and the developer they know well about this, but why they try to have the, because even they know, I mean that even they know the problem, but Vietnam we still have a lot of achieved the very successful the target of the solar development in Vietnam. If the question, I think that we should consider very carefully the game. I think that is the game, because almost of the people we know already the rule and the game, but we still face the risk, and I think that the challenges now is the reason why we have the event today to talking about the solution, and I think it's the opportunity and the challenges, and some solution to overcome and to deal with the curtailment. I think that best is one of the solution, but we should put the best in the situation of Vietnam. It's quite different with the other country. So I think that we will waiting for Mr. Đức to have to put the existing situation and solution for Vietnam power system is better.
Well, I think given that curtailment is such an important issue and one of the drivers for solar, I might just park it for a minute and we'll come back to it when Mr. Đức rejoins us. Chavanut, I was wondering if you could give us some insight into some of the current challenges that you're facing in the market at the moment.
Hi everyone, my name is Chavanat Chayanan from Cancun Engineering. Now I'm a Vietnam country manager and based in Ho Chi Minh. Actually, from all of the investors who have the power plant, either the solar plant, the wind farm, or whatever. Now everyone facing the same situation. We've got the curtailment, and everyone understand the result, but many investors, like Mr. Minh said, now the wind projects that going to COD in this October. So many projects they're like running to meet the COD, even they know that curtailment is waiting for them. So honestly, it's a challenge for us for the financing, because we have to pay the loan, we have to pay the debt to the bank. So it depends on the direction of each company, what their return they're expecting. And of course, now every project, before we invest, we have to combine this curtailment like percentage into our returns. Yeah, so it's difficult, but we have to work on it. And like this session for the energy storage, that might be help to everyone, including the investor, also the EVN on the grid management side. Yeah.
So what would you need? What would you need in order to incentivize the energy storage to be that solution?
Energy storage, actually, in terms of investor, everyone waiting for two things for energy storage. One is the price. Another thing is the policy. Yeah. So because actually we never developed yet in Vietnam, but we did some successful project in Thailand, and they are pilot project for the microgrid with the electricity of Thailand. So the problem of that project is only the technical part and the cost. But then when we move the work to the private sector, which related to the commercial side, we found many problems in terms of regulation because we don't know which one we can do, which one we cannot do. Then we question to the authority. The authority also doesn't have the clear answer because regulation didn't design for the energy storage procedure. So I want to mention that it is not only the big picture policy that we need. It's also like in the detailed regulation that is very important when we actually develop the project itself. Yeah.
Samrush, do you have anything to add from your experience in this area?
Yes, sir. I think, because the topic of the question is how and when, we integrate storage with solar. So I guess, just the regulation is not there right now for energy storage, to be honest, right? So especially if say a factory wants to buy energy storage, maybe they can for self-use. But if say third-party investors like ourselves, we want to buy energy storage, maybe from Genco or somebody else, and then we lease it to a factory, there is no regulation right now which can govern that. And unless that regulation is really defined, I cannot invest and provide this solution to a client. So that off-peak to peak shift would not happen, right? Because that regulation is not there. So that I think should come up. I'm expecting that probably by next year, it should come. Second is the commercials aspect, right? I think Chris mentioned about the LCOE from Genco, but generally the battery prices, as we speak, every 6 months are going down right now. Based on the battery prices now, it is commercially attractive based on our calculations. It is commercially attractive to replace diesel, but whether it is commercially attractive to put in an industrial factory or not, it is just at the at the cusp, right? So if the battery prices go down by 20-30%, then it becomes very attractive. And my expectation is that after next year, when the battery prices go down and it becomes very commercially attractive, then and the regulations are there as well, then there would be a mass adoption of these ESS solutions. This is a good time for us, in the ecosystem to talk, prepare, and so on. But after next year, I think the boom in ESS will just start the way solar boom happened in the last 3 years.
So I think here we have two questions that maybe other panelists can answer. Number one, how are we going to go with the regulations? And secondly, is this fall in battery prices going to continue? So while Genco is thinking about the answer on the question of battery prices, maybe Ming, you can give us some insight into whether we're going to get some good regulations soon.
I think that in terms of the regulation or the policy, something like this, not only for renewable energy and but also for the BESS or ESS. You know that BESS or ESS, the solution. I think that before we discuss and talking about the regulation for BESS, I think that we should determine what is the problem in the power system in Vietnam, and we should identify the reason why, the reason why we are facing with the problem, and then we're talking about the solution. And when we have the good answer for the question, I think that we should have the good recommendation for the policy and for the regulation. I mean that including the economical and technical regulation. And I think that best is the solution that is not new. I think that is not a new the new solution in the developed country, but it's still, I think that is still the new in the developing country, particularly in Vietnam. And it's new, but I think that, but it's not but not because the technology is new, because we don't have the real mechanism and the policy for the development of the best. And it's the reason why I think that in Vietnam we the government and the event or the utility we talking about the best solution, but the mechanism and the incentive like the pricing or the technical requirement, something like this, at this time we don't have any the recommendation and any the roadmap to develop the best regulation. And that the overall role of best is to provide ancillary service in the grid or in the power system. So in Vietnam now we need to calculate and we need to simulation and to determine the need and the suitable location to use the best in the power system. I mean that in the national power system, not the local power system. But Vietnam case is quite different with the other country. We are facing with the curtailment, and the investor and the supplier. You think that best is the one of the solution to deal with the curtailment, but like the solar farm, if you if the government, I think that the government or the MOIT or local state give you the chance to develop the best in somewhere, in anywhere, I think that is not good for the system. It's the reason why we should calculate and make some simulation to identify the good location for the best in whole system, not for the local or for the provincial power system. It's our approach, but it's my approach, not our approach, but I think it's the good approach for the long term. I think that for the short term and medium term, the best is the solution to deal with the curtailment, maybe the next 5 years or next 3 years. But for the long term, when the investor or developer to decide before to decide the investment, the best you should make the calculation and evaluation for the long term, at least 10 years or 20 years to decide the investment. I think that is a good approach for not only for the policymaker, but I think that is the good for the investor. That's all.
Thanks for that. I think you're right. It's important to make good regulations, but it's also important to make timely regulations. So who from Jinko wants to pick up the question of where battery prices are going? Because I think this is key, and users may move faster than the regulator at this rate if the battery prices fall. Chris or Arun? Arun.
Chris, do you have the information of that? Sorry, because I didn't follow much about the price trends of the battery so far. but I know that it has been dropped significantly, over 80% from 2010 to last year. But I think the key driver to reduce that price is possible mainly because driven by the technology innovation and the manufacturing capacity. But to look forward, how quick the price will drop and at what level, I think maybe Chris, you have that information.
Okay, I'll take from here. So yeah, everyone was interested about the price, like because you be monitoring the previously of the price structure, and the LFP price goes down maybe like over like 20-30% in previous year, but recently I would say from last year to this year, well, only a few percent or not even 10% of the LFP. And but due to the coronavirus, due to these circumstances, and the price goes up a little bit higher because of the logistic issue and the upstream issue. And right now, because of in China, most of the stores are being held or being controlled or being guaranteed as supported to the EV car, the energy vehicle. So because the booming of the ESS in the manufacture of the vehicle side, and part of the source will be given in the energy storage side. So the price I would say for this year, I probably agree will be like remain the same or even a little bit drop, 3 or 2% due to some new technology. And but some predict maybe like 10% will drop in this year. But personally, I probably do not agree with that. Maybe 8% maximum. And but we'll see. I mean, if the situation goes well and we can get more in the upper stream that are like say TL or other big manufacturer are having like good support and from the raw material, and I think will remain the same, remain the price the same, or drop like 3 to 5% of it. And but I would say as I mentioned, like around 200 or 150 kilowatt hours per US dollar per kilowatt hours are much lower than previously. Previous probably go 300, 400, and even higher. But right now,
maybe a manufacturer is the wrong person to ask for lower prices. I'm sure you want to keep the prices and get as much money as possible for your product. Welcome back, Mr. Duc. We put on hold our discussion on curtailment, but curtailment is clearly a big issue in Vietnam. And we were wondering how it can be solved and what your thoughts are on this. If you can give us some insight into solving the curtailment problem, both in the short term and in the medium to long term.
In terms of the curtailment,
yes,
we really experience the renewable energy. So with the solar, including the incoming wind, we really hard to solve the and traditionally we just use the build up a new routine, but some problem with the land acquisition are the factor. Many new transmission lines not be in place on time. Really, the big issue. We have the high rate, and so in the battery, we will allow the potential to make use of the new technology, harness the feature of the new technology, easily to deploy the megawatt in a short duration time. Use the battery to solve a multi frequency control, energy shifting. So based on the forecast, the best can be reduced. I do hope that in the 3 years, we can see a lot of the battery sector can invest in Vietnam for long runs on the battery, but the conventional manner we can use actively to solve the in Vietnam. Yeah.
So one of our audience has asked how much percentage of curtailment is commonly experienced.
In fact, for solar, because it is depend on, but roughly the energy, the curtailment ranging from 10 to 15% for solar, but for current or the existing portfolio, we just experience 7% in terms for wind. But it is quite. We also have some effect from the 19. Still estimate that roughly additional 2,000 can be in place. Based on that, the for wind can be slightly up to 10 or 12%. Yeah.
Was that 10 to 15% for solar or 10 to 50% for solar?
15.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. I was a bit worried if it was going to be 50.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Batteries are obviously, storage is one way to solve the curtailment issue. Are you looking at storage solutions as one of the short-term ways to solve curtailment? And if so, who would be installing the batteries?
In fact, and also assign some the detailed risk study of the necessity for the, and we also that the large can be deployed to solve the, but in terms of economical point of view, it's not feasible. Short term, we recommend that even conduct kind of the pilot project with the capacity 50 for 2 hours. So like the experience based on formulate the grid force to hope that in the future the battery we can ready. But for the short term now, just for the pilot, it is the maximum.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure whether anyone else is having this problem, but I'm finding you're breaking up a little bit, Mr. Duc. Did I correctly hear you to say that at the moment battery storage is not feasible, but you're looking at pilot projects?
So the rate for that is so high, right? The other conventional. So EVN side, we just have a kind of the pilot project. So based on the to convince the to approve that, the agency to approve the scheme, the pilot project result, we can have the deployment in the future.
Just as you were coming back, we were hearing from Jinko some estimates of where battery prices might fall in the future, and I think I heard, you know, some percentage fall next year is possible. So hopefully we'll be seeing battery prices coming down to within acceptable levels. But why don't we hear a little from the private sector, their view on the feasibility of integrating storage with solar. Samresh, what do you think of this issue?
Actually, I wanted to ask a question because I think, Mr. Duke's job is now very unenviable. It's a very difficult job right now, managing all this. But the question I have was, I think it would be useful for everybody, given the topic as well, is the timing for this pilot, which is being planned by EVN. When do they want to, install it, and by when do you think, the insights from that pilot can be completed by EVN?
In fact, project just now so from EVN, we need to submit a comprehensive scheme to agency and get the final. Based on that, we can deploy the pilot. So estimate it take at least 2.5 years.
Okay, battery prices could be very different in 2.5 years' time. Shavanut, did you have any other insights from doing your pilot projects in Thailand that you could share with the audience?
So actually, the pilot project in Thailand is similar to the what EVN going to have. So the pilot project we doing with the like PEA and EGAT in Thailand, which is like EVN in Thailand. So we doing the microgrid for the location that have unstable electricity. So the objective is kind of different from here. Here we want to solve the curtailment, right? But in the project we did, the objective is for like to get more stabilized electricity in like rural area of Thailand, and that's a pilot project. Like PEA want to test the system if it work with the grid and with the off grid, can they sustainable before they start the next project in another location.
And have you any insights in setting up that project that might be useful for Mr. Duke in setting up his pilot?
Yes, we have the technical team, because actually that project, the owner is the Electricity of Thailand, and we doing the design and EPC for the Electricity of Thailand.
Okay. So maybe we should move on now. We've got some questions from our audience, and there's one for you here, Samresh. You said earlier that you predicted that after next year we may see a booming storage market in Vietnam. What is it that makes you think that?
Yeah, I think the boom would start when there is a confluence of, or when simultaneously the battery prices go down and it becomes very commercially attractive, and there is a supporting regulation. And hearing that the pilot by EVN and the insights would take much longer, 2.5 years. I guess the regulations, detailed regulations, probably I was expecting towards the end of next year, but if it gets delayed, then the timing of this boom would get delayed further. But what would happen is, as the battery prices keep going down slightly more than what is today, there would be more adoption, right, by factories, residentials themselves, who will start investing. Once there is positive results by that, and technologically people are comfortable with it, then there would be an exponential growth. So this testing of adoption would happen over the next 1.5 years or so, and if there is a some detailed supporting regulation, that is when it will take off. And I refer to the solar boom in Vietnam as well. Till 2018, there was hardly, the megawatts of solar power was in single digits, right? Less than 10 megawatt. And now in 2.5 years, it's 20,000 megawatt, right? So it's an exponential growth. So yeah, I mean that's the reason why I expect it to go that way.
Thank you for that. We also
Sarah, I like to add a little bit on Samrej's point. I think I also agree with Samrej that possible that the next year or a year after, ESS might be very popular in Vietnam. Given the reasons that the cost of the battery also reducing and the performance of battery also keep improving. I mean, the duration of the battery from 4 hours, maybe, develop more hours in next year incoming. And electricity price in Vietnam also keep increasing according to the energy consumption in the country. So the gap between peak and off-peak and during the normal price rate would be even more bigger gap. Why the price or the cost of the battery is low down, meaning that the return of investment of the battery would be make more sense for the let's say the self-consumption rooftop owner to check the peak or to manage the demand charge management cost to reduce the electricity bill. It will make more sense for this kind of business to consider ESS to be installed. Yeah.
Thank you. I was going to move on to some of the other further mechanisms and policies for renewable energy development. We've had quite a number of questions coming through on these kinds of issues, such as, what about auctions and will there be another FIT? So Ming, do you have any insights into the other mechanisms and policies for renewable energy development?
Yes, talking about the policy or mechanism, I think that Vietnam we achieved many record results. I think that in the solar and wind is coming, and the FIT pricing mechanism had really brought a lot of the opportunities and positive results to Vietnam. Besides, we still have many challenges, and after 2 and 3 years for the booming development of the renewable energies, I think that we had lesson learned. I think you and Vietnam, and us, almost of us, we have the lesson learned from the renewable energy development in Vietnam. Although Vietnam has developed very quickly, I personally still think that Vietnam is still a younger market with many sustainable opportunities for next 5 years. I think the question is for me, but I think the most of you can have the general answer what we need to do for the next mechanism. And currently, there are 2 mechanisms that the people and some the stakeholder talking about this. The first one is the auction scheme, and the second one is the PPA mechanism. And both of the mechanism we are developing. But the Vietnam case is quite different because we have the very special legal framework. It's the reason why I think that in general auction scheme or DPPA maybe the very similar word and same to the other country. But for the detailed mechanism, I think that we should spend time to study and to develop the suitable mechanism for Vietnam. And the mechanism, I mean the option scheme or DPPA should have the long-term and sustainable development mechanism, not like the FIT, FIT for solar and wind only have the 2 or 3 maximum 3 year for the developer and for investor, but option scheme and DPPA, I think that should have the long-term development. And for the detail, I think that at the moment I could not talk in the detail because any recommendation or the content is still in the paper. It is still in the paper and the draft. So not only the final decision, so I could not provide to you.
But do you think we will? Do you think it will be opening in 2021 or 2022? The DPPA and the auction.
This is original plan, but I think that when we study detail the content, there's some the content we should revise, and report to the very high leader to have the direction and to have the vision to develop the mechanism. And for the DPPA, we have planned to implement the pilot, and after the pilot, I think that is coming as soon as possible, and we're trying to finalize the mechanism to implement the pilot next year. But the specific time I could not make sure that the first quarter or second quarter, something like this. And the option scheme, I think that it takes longer time, and maybe the last quarter of this year, the MOIT, we could publish the official draft for stakeholder comment and to make a public hearing, and we're willing to receive your comment and any recommendation for Vietnam.
The DPPA scheme probably needs a functioning wholesale market, though. So when do you think the wholesale market will actually go live?
You mentioned about the wholesale market.
Yeah, I've been watching the wholesale market in Vietnam be planned for so long I can't remember, but it's well over 10 years. I think everyone really wants to know whether it'll really go live. Actually, it would support so many of these other things as well.
Actually, you know that the wholesale competitive market in Vietnam, we already implement from 2019, and until now we have more than 2 years to implement the wholesale competitive market. And the next of the competitive market in Vietnam, we will move to the retail competitive market after 2023. And I think that most of the so many people know well about the started of the wholesale competitive in Vietnam.
Thanks for that. I think we're just about out of time, but maybe I'll let the three private sector players, Samresh and Arun and Shavanut, if you've each got maybe one thing that you would like to your wish list for the improvements in the policy to incentivize battery storage or renewables. Why don't you each give the one thing that you would most like to happen? I'll start with you, Samresh.
The one thing which would want is a clearer policy for third-party, ESS investment. Just like for rooftop solar, the policy came in April 2020, right? For an investor to provide solar as a service. So for an investor to provide the ESS or BESS as a service, we need policy for that.
Great. I totally agree. Arun?
Yeah, for me, I think actually to invest on ESS is not only that a burden from the system grid operator, but actually the investor or the storage developer who has experience doing this BSS services. Maybe some of them also willing to invest on this, but it's just that we are waiting for the clear policy from the government. Because without the clear policy from the government, the utility market operation may not willing to procure the services from BSS. And furthermore, if this service is not guaranteed to be paid or to compensate, I believe that a lot of the investor or even financing institution also will be reluctant to make capital investment on the BSS. So if EVN, takes time to do this, I think the workaround solution is try to open the regulation environment, make a clear policy. I think private sector maybe will be interested to do that and, to solve the current curtailment issue.
Great. Thank you for that. Shavanut, any final thoughts? You come last, so other people have got the easy solutions.
Actually, my answer would be the same. Yeah, because without the clear policy, we cannot start it. We cannot even now the technology is kind of ready, like from the presentation from Jinko, right? But with the clear direction and policy and regulation, then from the investor, we can go through and see the possibility, can we do it or not. Without it, like, it's really tough for us to analyze or even to ask for the investment to join and to help. So the Mr. Arun recommendation is really good. So the private sector, like, are willing to join, give some recommendation, asking question, because it's not easy regulation actually all around the world. The ESS is kind of headache for the load dispatcher, because like without smart grid for them it will be really painful and headache. So I know it's a lot of work, but at least for us to start it, to develop, we need a clear policy and regulation to follow.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Shavanut. So I think we've just about come to the end of the webinar. It's been fascinating. I think we've understood that there are curtailment issues in Vietnam, that battery storage is definitely well placed to solve some of these issues, particularly in the short term before the grid gets expanded. But that the battery prices do need to come down a bit before they're economically competitive from EVN's perspective. And that to get all of this to happen, we really need some clear policy guidance and regulatory framework for batteries, so that the private sector have some certainty that they can actually get paid if they do install battery storage. There's quite a vigorous debate going on in the Q&A about whether batteries or pumped storage are better. I think we'll park that one for another day, and I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for your great moderation of this panel, and thanks to everyone for the great discussion and the information sharing. So now, I'm not sure if you can see my screen. So thanks again, everyone, to all the attendees. Thanks for joining today's webinar. And we do appreciate all speakers' great support and the valuable comments for this market. And as we mentioned before, we will share the recordings and the PowerPoint slides used of today's webinar to your registration email by the end of next week. And should you have any questions, please also feel free to contact our team through the email address showing on the slide right now. And also please do to make sure to follow Solar Talks webinar on LinkedIn to get our first-hand webinar update information. So thanks again, everyone, for attending the webinar today. We will see you next time.